You ever wish you could just find a switch and turn off all the noise in your head? Well, we're about to dive into a simple but really powerful story that might just hold the secret to that kind of mental calm. It's all about a young man, a wise teacher, and believe it or not, a single glass of water.
So, let me ask you, does your mind ever feel like it just will not shut off? You know, like there's this constant storm of thoughts and worries and what-ifs just swirling around in there, leaving you totally drained? If you're nodding along, trust me, you are not alone.
And that brings us to our story. It's about a 24-year-old guy named Marco. For him, that mental storm wasn't just a now-and-then thing. It was his everyday reality.
See, Marco's mind was completely trapped. It felt like he was constantly being pulled in two directions at once. On one side, he was haunted by regrets and sadness about things that had already happened, and on the other, he was just overwhelmed with anxiety about what was coming. He was living everywhere except right here, right now. And this constant mental battle, it really took a toll on him. He felt this constant unease from the moment he woke up. He was tired all day long, but then when it came time to sleep, he just couldn't. It got so bad, he'd kind of forgotten what it even felt like to have a real, genuine smile. So, right when he was at his breaking point, Marco heard a rumor. People were talking about this wise old man, a former psychologist, who left the city to live a quiet life up in the hills, helping people who came looking for him. For Marco, this felt like a desperately needed glimmer of hope. And that was it. He made up his mind. He had to find this man. The journey was exhausting. It took him days, but he finally made it to this little village in the hills and found the house, just a peaceful little cottage completely covered in greenery. He saw the wise man sitting on his porch, and Marco just walked up and poured his heart out. He told him all about the storm in his head, how he couldn't stop the thoughts, and how desperate he was for some peace. And then he just asked, "Can you help me?" Now, the wise man's response was not what you'd expect. He didn't launch into some big lecture or a complicated philosophy. Nope. He just smiled, stood up, and gave Marco a very simple, very practical task to do. He took a glass and filled it with water right up to the very brim, so full that the tiniest little shake would make it spill. He handed it to Marco, and the instructions were simple. Walk to the edge of the village, and then walk all the way back here. But here's the kicker. There was one rule, just one. No matter what happened, Marco was not allowed to spill even a single drop of water. And that one little rule, well, it changed everything. So Marco takes the glass and starts walking. Now, this village road was busy. People were rushing around, shopkeepers were shouting out to customers, dogs were barking, all kinds of distractions. But Marco, he was totally oblivious to all of it. He didn't see or hear a thing. His focus was just absolute. It was like his entire universe just shrank down to that glass in his hand and the shimmering surface of the water he was so determined not to spill. Every single step was careful, his attention completely consumed by this one task. And finally, he gets back to the wise man's house. He's got this quiet sense of accomplishment. He holds out the full glass and says, "I did it. I didn't spill a single drop." The wise man just smiled. And then he started asking some questions that got right to the heart of the real lesson. He asked Marco about what he saw in the village. You know, did he see the kids playing? Did he hear the dogs barking? Marco looked kind of surprised. He thought about it for a second and then answered, honestly, "No, I didn't notice any of that. My entire focus was on the glass." And right there, in that simple answer, you could see the light bulb go on. And that was the whole secret. When his mind was completely 100% full with the present moment, that simple act of carrying the water, there was literally no room left for anything else. No space for sad memories. No space for anxious worries. His mind just became quiet. I mean, look at the difference. It's so clear, right? Before the task, his mind was a storm of past and future. But during the task, it was full of now. The storm just vanished, and in its place was this focused calm. And Marco finally got it. He realized that peace wasn't something you go out and find. It was something he could create, right here, right now, just by anchoring his mind to whatever he was doing in that moment. Just think back to the Marco we met at the beginning of this story. He was restless, totally exhausted, and just lost in a sea of thoughts he couldn't control. But the man who left the village that day was completely different. Yeah, he was the same person on the outside, but inside, he was transformed.
He carried with him this deep sense of peace because now he knew the secret to creating it himself.
So what this incredible story teaches us is that real peace of mind isn't some faraway destination. It's a state of being that's always available to us. It's already inside you, just patiently waiting for you to show up in the present moment.
So, I guess the question for all of us is this. What in your life right now can you give your full, undivided attention to? What is your glass of water that can bring you back to the peace of this very moment?